Jenny.
And this is Judy.
And we are the Group 8 reporters. So here are the learning objectives. First, define what is a GRASP framework. Second, discuss what is a project-based learning and assessment. And third, write a project-based assessment in a GRASP framework. Alright, so what is GRASP? So as what we have known, it has already been discussed by the previous reporters, the group 7. Now we are just going to have a recapitulation about it since our topic for today has something to do with the GRASP framework. So to dig further about it and to know more about it, GRASP is a model for demonstrating performance of understanding using authentic assessments. It is also a model that helps define the scope and context of the learning experience. It is ideally suited to a project-based inquiry, and it represents a framework for organizing, delivering, and assessing a project-based assessment. So to know more about it, let us dig further to its representation. So there are letters that make up the word GRASP. So letter G stands for goal. Goal states the goal, the problems, the challenges, or the outcome of the project. R represents the role, which defines the role of the students and the perspective from which they approach the task. Letter A stands for audience. It defines the relationship between the audience and the students. So usually it asks the question, how will the two interact? S stands for situation. It describes the context for the inquiry. P stands for product. It defines what will be produced in relation to the task. And S stands for standards. The standards that will be used to evaluate the success of the performance.
So now, let's talk all about the project-based learning. So what is a project-based learning? So it is a teaching method that allows students to gain knowledge by requiring them to work for an extended period of time to investigate a complex problem or question. Students are given the freedom and opportunity to explore real-world problems and develop a deeper and more enriched understanding. As a result, students develop deep content knowledge as well as critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication skills. Project-based learning unleashes a contagious creative energy among students and teachers. So, next is what is project-based assessment. So project-based assessment is the approach used in design education to assess students' performance. It allows a child to demonstrate his or her capabilities while working independently. So, here are the 3 key characteristics of a project-based assessment. So first, teaching through the project. Second, connecting the project with the real world. And lastly, promoting students' autonomy. So here are some examples of project-based assessment. So first is the list of infographics. So certain projects may require a long list of materials from your students. In order to keep track of their materials and keep students organized, a list is integral. So project example. So as you can see here in the picture, building bridges with list infographics. So the next example is poster design. So once students have completed their planning, they can use a poster design to create an event which outlines all the details of their campaign. So project example, creating a fundraising campaign for an issue you care about.
Alright, so in writing a project based assessment, there are lots of guidelines and guide examples that we need to follow in order to effectively make such project based assessments. So let's explore and discover. So, for example, first, in making a goal, so there are guiding questions here. So, some of the guiding questions are: first, what is an authentic goal related to the discipline? Next, what makes this goal worthwhile for students to investigate? Next, how will students understand the importance of the goal? And what prior knowledge do students have that will help them achieve the goal? So these questions are very much important in order for us to effectively craft a goal for our project-based assessment. Next, we have also the guidance that we need to follow and to base as well. So the following are: the goal must be written as one statement, and it must sound like a strong statement of inquiry, and it is driven by the conceptual understanding of the unit. So we have here an example of a goal. So some of the examples are the following: optimize the packaging and shipping of a product to reduce waste, cost, and CO2 emissions. So the next example is determine the ideal method for evaluating air quality. And other example is determine to the island of the positive and negative impacts of tourism. So we can see that it follows, or the guiding questions and the guidance are made as the basis in making the goal. Next, let's go to the role. Okay, so the guiding questions of the role in crafting a role are the following. So what are some authentic roles that are related to the goal or discipline? Next, how will students understand the scope and expectations of the role? So it is very necessary that the students know what are the scope that are expected to have or to portray in the role. Next, what prior knowledge about the role will students have? And what skills and knowledge will students need to be successful in this role? And lastly, is there a role model that students can refer to or meet in person? So the guidance are the following. Identify the authentic roles and help students understand the scope of the role. And roles should frame the perspective from which students engage with the inquiry. So we have here an example of a role. So you are a marine biologist who studies coral reefs. So obviously the role or your role here is a marine biologist. And then you are concerned with rising sea levels and how these will impact the reefs you study. You are part of a team of biologists, data analysts, tourism operators, and local fishers who are working on solutions to this problem. So the role here is the marine biologist. So other roles also that we can incorporate in our project-based assessments are the following. Some of them are marketing manager, public health researcher, product designer, and photojournalist, and there are lots more. Next, audience. The guiding questions in crafting or in effectively crafting an audience are the following. What is the relationship between the audience and the role? So this is the fundamental questions that needs to be considered in audience. So what is the relationship between the audience and the role? Next, what are the defining characteristics of the audience, and how might these influence the skills and knowledge needed by the students to be successful? Okay, so the guidance, it defines an authentic audience. Avoid being too broad. So in considering an audience, we have to avoid being too broad about making or crafting an audience for our project-based assessment. Next is consider the relationship between the role and the audience, and it should not be a teacher. So example here, the clients are looking for a new chair designed for their office space. They want the chair to showcase sustainable design practices in the types of materials and processes used in its construction. Sustainability is an important characteristic of their brand. They are seeking to support emerging local designers in their space. So obviously the audience here are the clients who are looking for a new chair design. Alright, so other audiences could also include visitors of a gallery museum, other researchers, editor of a history blog, director of marketing, head of nonprofit organizations, and among others. Next, situation. So the guiding questions in crafting a situation are the following. How will the students understand the significance and value of the situation? How is the situation connected to an authentic, a real-world experience or situation? And what prior skills and knowledge of the concept do the students have? So we have here the guides. Use the unit concepts to define the situation. Situation should be engaging and educational, and it allows an element of choice or differentiation on how they approach the task. So we have here an example. Students should be presented with or engaged with the situation, and this can be done through any type of provocation and learning experience. And generally, it is helpful to develop a statement of the situation to guide teachers and students. The statement can form the rationale for the inquiry, which is why it is being done and what its value is to the students and beyond the classroom. Next, the product. So the guiding questions in crafting a product are the following. How will students show their conceptual understanding through the product? So through the product, it is the basis or the outcome of what you have learned on a certain topic or a certain lesson. So how can the task be structured to allow for differentiation and student choice in the final product? And what knowledge and skills do students need in order to be successful? Because, in crafting a product, you really need to possess such knowledge and skills in order for you to effectively craft or create an effective and productive outcome, which is the product. And lastly, how will the students understand the content and quality expectations for the product? So we have here the guidance. It should be authentically related to the goal, role, audience, and situation. Yes, the product should be interconnected to the previous terms, which are the goal, the role, the audience, and the situations. These things must be interconnected and interrelated. Next, it allows an element of choice in how they approach the task. So we have here lots of examples of products. So we can have a prototype for a design, software program, infographic or poster, article for a journal or blog, a series of artworks, a podcast, a performance, a poem, prototype for testing, design brief, design proposal. So these are some of the examples of product. And lastly, the standards. So we have here the guiding questions. How will And lastly, we have here the standards. So we have here the guiding questions. How will the standards be communicated to students? So it is very necessary that in giving the students a performance or a project-based performance, they are aware on what are the basis of their grades or what are the standards that they need to meet in order for them to effectively craft a project, or like they have the basis to follow and to base from. Alright, so next is how will students use the standards to monitor and self-evaluate their success? And are the expectations and task specific clarifications clear, reasonable, and achievable? The standards also have to be reasonable, achievable, and clear in order to follow or in order to have a very transparent outcome, which is the product. And lastly, how will students manage their progress on the task? So we have here the following guidance. It only uses strands that can effectively assess the product. It must be in a written, clear, student-appropriate language. So we have here examples. So possible standards may include task-specific clarifications, rubrics, national or state standards, or co-created rubric or success criteria. So you may just choose one or some of these examples of standards in making or in assigning the students in creating project-based assessment.
So in GRASPS framework, there are sentence starters that serve as guide and basis. So the goal usually starts with these lines. Your task is to, the goal is to, the problem or challenge is, and the obstacle to overcome is. So for the role, these are the starters of the sentence. You have been asked to, and your job is. So for the audience, the sentence starts with, your clients are, the target audience is, and you need to convince. So for the situation, these are the starters of the sentence. First is the challenge involves dealing with, the context you find yourself in is, and the context requires an understanding of. So for the product, the sentence starts with, you will create a, in order to. Next, you need to develop a, so that. So next is the standards. These are the sentence starters of the standards. First is, your performance needs to, your work will be judged by, your product must meet the following standards, and a successful result will.
Alright, so let's try some example. We have here an example like the teacher give the students give the students the task to write a project-based assessment in the subject geometry. So, for example, the content standard must be that the learner demonstrates understanding of key concepts of geometry of shapes and sizes and geometric relationship. So that's the content standard. Next, the performance standards. The learner is able to create models of plane figures and formulate and solve accurately authentic problems involving sides and angles of a polygon. Next is the transfer task or the engaging scenario. So here's the scenario. A group of businessmen is planning to build an amusement park, and they want the roller coaster to be exciting and the best roller coaster ever. So they have decided to meet with different roller coaster designers so that they can choose then or hire the one with the best design. So they are hiring or they're looking for a designer or an architect or an engineer to design their aimed roller coaster. So applying the GRASP framework, so here it is. The goal must be to look at the roller coasters of the different amusement parks and make them as the basis for creating a much better or the best roller coaster design. So the role, you are a roller coaster designer who wants to be hired by a group of businessmen by creating a much better or the best roller coaster design. So your role here is you are a roller coaster designer. Next, your audience. So the target audience is the group of businessmen who will hire a roller coaster designer for their future amusement park. And the situation, you need to produce and present a roller coaster design that will convince the group of businessmen to hire you as their designer. So the situation here is you are the roller coaster designer, and then you are to design a roller coaster design that would satisfy your audience, which are the group of businessmen. And your product that would be the best roller coaster design to be presented to the group of businessmen. Next, the last one is the standard. So the roller coaster design to be presented must be precise and well drafted, supported by theories and concepts of angles, parallel and perpendicular lines, accurate and will give excitement and thrill to the clients, and convincing not only because of the fun and challenge that it can give, but also because of the security it can offer to the would-be clients. So, as what you have noticed, all the guidelines and the rules in crafting a GRASP framework, from the goal up to the standards, are being integrated in this example, or those, especially those sentence starters, is what you have noticed. We have integrated it here in our example. So, here is the instruction of the task. So the student must construct or design a project based using a GRASP framework. So follow the format given above, so you can make it through a creative PowerPoint presentation. So you can add introduction of the chosen curriculum. It may be grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, or grade 10, and the chosen quarter as well. So make sure that you know the content of the project based in the GRASP framework, because I will be asking 5 to 10 students to present their project based using a GRASP framework, and tasks to answer the question based on your project based. So the schedule of this presentation will be on November 20, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. So you will be graded given by the following criteria. So this criteria or rubric falls under the standards, right? So here is the criteria for this task or for this project-based assessment. So the content or the creativity must be 20 points, the product or appearance must be 10 points, and the relevance 5 points, punctuality 5 points, and the significance of the GRASP framework 5 points, and the involving during virtual meeting 5 points, with a total of 50 points. That's all, and we have here our bibliographical references. So we have gathered some points and insights from this link as being presented in the screen. So thank you so much, and if you have some questions, just feel free to send us a private message, and we're very much willing to entertain you and accommodate you. And that ends our report. This has been your reporter, Jenny.
And this is Judy.
Thank you, and have a nice day ahead.